The time has arrived. China's $62 trillion property market is now fully exposed. You came here for the truth. I have been covering this extensively for quite a while. You have seen the videos, I'm sure, highlighting every single piece of detail, and now we hit the next level. The first thing I want to look at is the fact that Evergrande has officially defaulted according to one ratings agency, and we'll talk more about that. The second thing that I want to cover today is the debt reckoning, because it's not just one company, it is actually much more than that. I want to focus on Evergrande, but I'm going to give you all the details surrounding this and how this is important to the financial system as a whole. And the third thing we are going to look at is that there is more to follow. 11 different companies within the property sector have been unable to pay their bills. So we're going to get into all of that and more. Let's begin. Evergrande. I've been talking about this. Now here we are. Beyond Evergrande, China's property market faces a $5 trillion reckoning. I wanted to highlight this. I wanted to put it up front simply because people would say it's just one company. They'll just bail them out, and perhaps they will. But I'm going to show you today the different side of the story. Developers have run up huge debts. Now home sales are down. Beijing is imposing borrowing curbs and buyers are balking at higher prices. Now why? Why is this all going on? Well, let's dig into the details. Now I'm sure you probably have seen other data, if not on this channel or others, but throughout this video, I'm going to give you tidbits. Stick with me, all right? Out of the New York Times, China Evergrande defaults on its debt. Now what? A ratings firm's declaration confirmed what investors had already suspected, but they now must wait on a restructuring plan overseen by the firm hand of Beijing. We know that the way this works. So essentially what's happening here is that they have not paid their debts, they missed the grace period, and now are officially in default. Okay? Now the next step is that some people from the government are going to meet with some people from Evergrande, and they're going to tell them how it's going to be. And you would think, well, they're simply just going to throw some paper at it. But actually, that's not the case. Okay, we're going to talk about that more in a second. Yes, we know that Evergrande, $300 billion worth of debt on paper, who knows how much is behind the scenes. And they do talk about the, all of the details, Fitch ratings being the one that came out first with this, but we can expect Moody's and S&P to also follow suit, and others as well. The firm, Fitch Ratings, said that in a statement it had placed the Chinese property developer in its restricted default category. What does that mean? Essentially, that they have defaulted unofficially. Okay, unofficially, why? Simply because they haven't said anything. And do you think that the government is going to necessarily go out there and say, okay, they've defaulted, we got chaos, we got problems? No, they're probably not going to put out an official statement. It's just going to be taken care of behind the scenes. Don't expect it to be like what we've seen previously in the US and so on. It's the nature of the next step: bankruptcy, a fire sale, or business as usual. That remains unknown. In the US and many other places, bondholders could push an unwilling company into some form of reorganization, usually in court, and divvy up the pieces. Now that still could happen, but we don't know exactly the details of how that's going to occur. The problem here, as I believe I'll get into in a couple minutes, is simply the fact that when you look at what's happening within China with Evergrande, it's not just this one company in one place and having one effect. This goes all over the place, multiple jurisdictions, and so it's not so easy to just throw some paper at it. It works very, very differently. Now take a look. Evergrande may have additional hidden debts of more than $156 billion, according to one estimate from Goldman Sachs. Several other property developers have defaulted on their debts, including Fantasia. I love that name. It just makes you think that this is all a fantasy. A luxury real estate company that surprised the market because it had never missed a payment. Kaisa under pressure to make the final bond payment on Tuesday, and I believe that this is actually from a few days ago. Guess what? They are in default as well. Okay, spoiler alert. Here you go. Evergrande and Kaiser cut by Fitch to default after missed payment deadlines. Why do we have to care about this? Why not just sweep it under the rug like everything else? The Chinese property market is likely the largest asset class in the world. $62 trillion. What if it's 60 trillion? What if it's 58 trillion? What if it's 40 trillion? Does it really matter? No, when we're talking about these massive numbers, it really doesn't. You can compare China to the US and so on. And obviously the US is massive. The real estate market is massive. And then you go down and just compare it to every other one. And it's really nothing comes close at all. Okay. So that's why it's key, really. But they make a good point right here. Direct fallout won't be the problem. It's having a billion Chinese watch this play out and then expecting them to spend afterward. Isn't that so true? But it's actually already taking place. I've shown you this chart before, Goldman Sachs. In the primary market, 70 city average property price fell marginally on a sequential basis, the first decline since April of 2015. So that has already happened. Why? Because you've got big companies like Evergrande essentially saying, okay, we're going to stop production on this one. We're going to focus all of it on this one. We've got problems. There's uncertainty. People don't know what to expect. They're not going to fork out as much cash as they used to. Is there still development happening? Are people still buying homes? Are people still moving? Of course, all of that's still happening. But we can see a big problem unfolding as we speak. And you might think, are they really going to let the bond holders get nothing at the end of it all? Well, what if they had 80% swiped off their value? That has already happened. Still near the lows, Evergrande's units. Dollar bonds remain in deeply distressed territory. Take a look. Look at that. It's at 20 cents on the dollar. 20 cents on the dollar. That's an 80% haircut. How would you feel if that was your asset? Sure, 20% is better than nothing, but it isn't much. It really isn't. When you look at it, an 80% crash in the value, you would not be too happy, I assure you. The People's Bank of China governor, check this out, okay, described Evergrande's situation as a market event that should be dealt with in a market-oriented way. That makes it seem as though, at least from the People's Bank of China, the central bank of China, that they would say, you know what? Let's let the market handle this. Now, on one hand, we have the admission that the government forces will be involved. At the same time, they're saying market-oriented. And what I believe that means is that they don't want to nationalize it, that they will certainly have a say in what happens. We know that. But maybe they're going to allow certain parts of it to fail, certain bondholders to get nothing, and a restructuring overall to take place. When they say restructuring, we need to understand what this means. It means people aren't getting paid. Not everybody's getting paid, okay? That is the clear-cut information that we must understand. Okay, taking a look here. The Shenzhen-based developer, which disclosed more than $300 billion of total liabilities in June, said in a brief exchange on December 3rd that it will actively engage with offshore creditors on a restructuring plan. But with Chinese authorities now calling the shots, the developer has stayed largely silent on the details of what its restructuring might look like. So it's not necessarily going to be Evergrande that says anything, but the government will decide what they're going to pay out. Now, you might say to yourself, well, I'm not invested in Evergrande, so it doesn't affect me. But I assure you, this is so key to understand for everybody because the financial system is so interconnected today. If you do agree with me on that, hit that thumbs up, okay? I need to know what you're thinking. Trust firms that have issued at least $5 billion in high-yield products linked to China's Evergrande group are bracing for a cascade of losses after the cash-strapped developer said it may no longer be able to meet its financial obligations. This is from a few days ago. They name at least 3 firms right here. So you see this? There is Evergrande. Evergrande's got a problem. Kaisa's got a problem. Fantasia's got a problem. Cynic. All these different companies, okay? I've been mentioning them all over the last little while. They've all got issues. And now you take it to the next level because you're saying this company here is starting to have that domino effect become an issue. Uh-oh. Now we're talking because these financial companies are connected with those financial companies, and you start to have the counterparty risk that we heard about back in 2007. Is it the same thing? Is it Lehman Brothers? No. This is its own particular event. Was LTCM anything like the dot-com bubble? Was the tulip mania anything like the housing crisis? I mean, you could pick and choose what you want from each one. And yes, there are similarities, but each event has its own situation that unfolds. And we never know until that period of time. We really don't. This is basically just talking about how China is going to an easing while the world is tightening. Right now, the entire world pretty much is encountering a tightening cycle. China seems to be going in the opposite direction. And why? Maybe they are trying to reverse what's happening in the property sector. Property sector is very important to China, and it seems like they may possibly be deciding to reverse that. The list of Chinese developers warning on debt grows. Taking a look at all of this, another company, here we go, Fitch downgrading yet another company. This list just goes on and on. All of the property sector seems to be in dealing with a big issue. And beyond that, something that I talked about the US, about the UK and Australia and Canada and everywhere else is corporate debt. The country's corporate debt of US dollars worth $27 trillion is almost 1/3 of the global total. Its debt to GDP ratio of 159% is markedly higher than the global rate of 101% and twice the US 85%, implying substantial financial and economic contagion risk. This is huge, but we can't talk about it. Some people are not going to like it. People are going to get offended by it. But I have to cover what I believe is reality. They added, with officials refusing to bail out the troubled developer, China's Evergrande group, fears of contagion risk are mounting. This dents investors' willingness to fund other Chinese developers with stretched finances. So you see how that works, a snowball effect. And I think this is so key to understand. I think this is so important. I hope that you do appreciate the information. I hope that you look at this and realize how serious it really has become. What I would say is simply to you as an individual, as an investor, watch where you are overexposed. If you've got leverage, if you've got margin, you might want to pull that back. I can't tell you what to do, but now is probably not the best time to have that. Doesn't mean you don't invest. Doesn't mean you take all of your cash and throw it under your mattress. It simply means that, you could step off the gas pedal a little bit. Let's take off that risk a little bit, okay? I don't know how to be any more polite about the situation, but that's where we're at today. If you appreciated this, simply hit that thumbs up button that supports the channel, as well as notifies a whole group of people out there who are unaware of the Money GPS, and the algorithms will pick that up. So I do appreciate that very much. And if you haven't seen this video yet, you definitely want to check it out. So just click it and I'll see you there.